What's up guys, Andre here, and today I wanted to show you guys how to do Ajax validation in Laravel. Now this might not be the most practical way to do validation, but might have some use cases for some of you out there. I'll show you an example of where I got the idea from. So if you're following my other series, my Laravel e-commerce series, you'll know that I'm using Laravel Voyager, and they actually use it here on their backend. So I have a validation rule here that says it can only have max 5 characters. So if I try to submit it, there's some Ajax happening there, and it highlights the validation rule and it shows the error message, and this is coming from Laravel's end. So we'll do something similar to this. Before we do that, let me just take a second to ramble about the pros and cons of the different types of validation. So number one is server-side validation. This is absolutely necessary for all production apps. You can't rely on front-end validation, as malicious users can easily bypass that. Some of the cons are it's slow, as it requires an HTTP request, and it's not the most user-friendly. But again, it's necessary for all apps. So the way I typically do it is, I have an example here. Sorry, that's the wrong URL. So I have an example here, and if I try to submit the form without filling it out correctly, then we have server-side validation rules happening. So the way I typically do it is I just have this code snippet, and it just checks if there's errors, and it puts it in an alert message box. If you take a look at Laravel's register, I have the auth scaffolding in place here. You can get a bit more fancy with it, so the error messages are sort of inline and they appear underneath the validation rule in question. So let me show you what I mean. If we go to register, and let me just take out the browser validation. So let me just take this out. And if you look at how they structure their errors, they're putting each error message within each field, and they're adding a class if there is an error. So it sort of looks like front-end validation, and it's a bit more user-friendly. So if I just fill this out, but leave the name out, you'll see that there's a validation error. Actually, I have to refresh. You'll see that there's a validation error right there, and it sort of looks like what a front-end validation system would give for you, but it's still on the back end. For example, if I put like just a whole bunch of text here and do the same thing, let me just refresh this. Like, it's not going to, it's going to scroll up, and it might be a bit confusing in terms of the user experience. So it's going to scroll up, and again, like, the user might be confused as they have to scroll down to see the errors. The next type of validation is browser validation. This is probably the easiest to set up, and it's built right into the browser, so there's no need for JavaScript. I typically do this combined with server-side validation, and I'm assuming a lot of people use this as well because it's just so easy to set up. One of the cons would be that each browser renders the errors differently, so it might not look consistent across different devices and across different browsers. So browser validation is just what we had here. Let me just remove this. When you add like a required attribute, or if you do input type equals email, like here, the browser is automatically going to validate that. And it just makes it so easy. There's even more things you can do. Take a look at this article from MDN. You can even do things like pattern. Like you can specify a regular expression here, and you can validate it right there. So for example, if I do that, so it will only accept inputs that are banana or cherry, and that's done for you already. See, that's not going to accept it. Refresh. See, please match the requested format. And another type of validation is JavaScript validation, where you use JavaScript or a JavaScript library to do the validation. This is the most customizable and will have a consistent look across all your devices and browsers. The biggest con is probably that you have to maintain two sets of validation rules, one on your server and one for the client. Now this Ajax validation that we're going to do sort of sits in between this JavaScript validation and server-side validation. And the main pro of using this Ajax validation is that we only have to have one set of validation rules on the backend Laravel side, and we can just piggyback off of that. Okay, let's start. So I'm going to be using this form, which is very similar to the registration form. I'm just using it because I don't want to create another model. And also this has a few validation rules in place already. Like there's one for required, obviously, and there's one for email, and there's one for the password confirmation. So I just have this create view. We don't need this anymore. And like I said, it's pretty much exactly like the register one, but there's no layouts going on here. And I also took out the browser validation here. So it's all just input type equals text, and there's no required attribute that I added. If you look at my routes file, there's only two new ones I added, one for showing the view and one for responding to it. So here's the controller, just showing that view, and here is where the user is actually created. But I'm using a form request here to do validation, and here's the form request, and here are the validation rules. So for the Laravel Validator, if you look at the documentation, if you look for 422, you'll see that it says if you make an Ajax request to validate something, then it's going to respond with a JSON response and a 422 HTTP status. When you're doing it the normal way, it's just going to do a redirect response. So in this case, we're going to catch that HTTP response, and we are going to react accordingly. Alright, let's finally write some code. I feel like I've been talking too much. So I'm just going to be using vanilla JavaScript and some ES6, and I'm going to be using Axios to make the Ajax request. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's make a new script tag here. I like to wrap everything in an invoking function, and let's respond to the submit event for the form. So let's get user form. That's the name of the form. There's an ID on it. So add event listener, submit, function, e, and let me just move this up for you. Okay, so what am I going to do here? I'm going to prevent the default. And now I'm going to make an Ajax request using Axios. Let me just grab like this from Axios, which is just some boilerplate, and we'll just work on it from there. Paste that in. Let me just reindent this. Is it from here? Yeah. Reindent. Okay. So I'm going to post to this.action. That's just the action of the form. So if I go to the form, so it's just this. So I don't have to parse this route helper that Laravel is using. It's already going to do that for us. And the reason I used this syntax instead of an arrow syntax for ES6 is so I can keep the context of this, so it's the form. And now we just have to pass in our data here. And I'm going to paste that in so you don't have to watch me do that. And it's just getting the values from our form. So our name, our email, our password, and our password confirmation, and we're just passing it in using JavaScript. And this is if it's successful. So for now, we'll just console log success, and we'll work on that later. I'm going to make this an arrow function, and same with this over here for the error case, which will be where most of our work goes. So we can't just console log the error because, let me just show you actually. Let me open DevTools and let me try to make this bigger. Okay, cool. Sorry. Make it bigger. Okay. So if I just click this, there is an error. Oh, sorry. Yeah, if I'm using the arrow function, there should be no function keyword. So let's try that again. So if I do this, okay, so it's logging the error, but I actually want the response from the server. So to do that, we can console log error.response, and then you'll see the structure of the data coming in from the server. So if we try that again, so there's the data right there, cool. And if we go into data, and there's a section called errors, we can see that the errors come in as an object, and each field has an array of error messages. So let's do something like this. Let's comment this out. Let's save that. Error.response.data.errors. So we're just following this structure that came in from the server. Okay, and let's just see how that looks. Okay, cool. So I'm only going to be handling one error at a time, and what I want to have happen is just grab the first error and scroll to it and show the message as it comes in. So whatever the error message is, I just want this first one, but since this is an object, I can't just get the first one. So let me show you what I want to do here. I'm just going to use, I'm going to call another variable called first item, and I'm just going to use this function object.keys, which will change the object to a array. So I'm going to change that, and then I'm going to get the first one, and that's going to return, just in this case it'll return email or whatever the first error is. So let me just console log that. Okay, cool. Actually, no, that's wrong. Let me just refresh. Okay, so name, and then if I put something in here, then this should be email. And it is, cool. Now we also want the DOM item associated with that. So we want, like for example, we want this text box associated with this. And I've structured my HTML such that the name, the input ID and the input name are the same. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make another variable, call it first item DOM, and I'm just going to do document.get element by ID, and that will just be that first item we just have. And we also want one more thing. Sorry. We also want the error message that comes in. So make one more variable. Sorry, there's a lot of variables here. And that's just going to be that first item that we got. And the first item coming in. Hope that makes sense. And now we have everything we need. So all we have to do is two things. We want to scroll to the error message, and we want to show the error message. So let me just put some extra stuff in here, so when we hit this button it actually scrolls to the error. Let me just put some crap in here. .form group norm 500. See how that looks? Okay, cool. That's cool. So when I click this and there's an error, I want it to scroll to the field with the error. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So scroll to the error message. How are we going to do that? Well, I actually just learned that there's actually a native method that does this in JavaScript. And that native method is called scroll into view. So we already have that DOM, so first item DOM, and we just call that method scroll, and you can see VS Code knows about it. And we can even do something like this. Behavior smooth. So it sort of scrolls to it smoothly. And that should scroll to the error message. Just be careful if you do this because the browser support is pretty good, but it doesn't work for IE. Just take a look at the MDN for this method. So let's see if that works. So I wanted to scroll here. There's going to be no error message because we haven't done that yet, but let's see if that works. And it does, cool. Let me also put some stuff on top of that just to make sure it's working. Just on top of the card here. See if this works actually. I just want to see if it's scrolling to the right place and not just the top. I think it is, just I don't know why it's scrolling a bit extra. Let me remove this behavior smooth. I think that we don't need that. Let's see if it works now. Okay, I'm just going to leave it like that. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is show the error message. So what I want to have happen when there's an error message, I just want to add another DOM element. Like for example, for this one, if there's an error on the name, I just want to add another one like right here. I think there's a class in Bootstrap called text danger. Now make it red. Error goes here, don't mind my spelling. See how that looks. Okay, so that's what I want. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay. So first item DOM, there's a method called insert adjacent HTML, and the first parameter is just where you want it to go, so after end. And the second parameter, I'm going to use template strings here. Div class equals text danger. And I want to put that first error message in there. And close the div. And close my template string. Alright, let's see if that works. Okay. There you go. The name field is required. But if I fix this, this is not going to go away, and we have to make sure that goes away. See, it's highlighting the correct field now, but that one never went away because it was there from before. So let's make sure we remove all of the ones from previously. So remove all error messages. And I'm just going to do a for each loop. Document, it's going to grab all of them. Document.querySelector all. And all of them are going to have the class with text danger on them. So let's grab all of those. And error messages dot for each, and it's going to do this with an arrow function, and we're just going to clear it up. Element dot text content equals blank. That should do it. Let's double check. So error at first. Okay, if I clear it and do the second error, cool, that one's gone. Awesome. I also want to highlight the text box. So just put a red border around this. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's make another section. Highlight the form control with the error. And that's simply enough. It's similar to what we just did. So first item DOM, we're just going to add a class. We actually have to add two classes. One is called border, and this is just default bootstrap 4. And the other one's called border danger. And that should do it. But we also have to do the same thing and remove all the previous ones. So remove all form controls with highlighted errors. Text box. Okay, so same thing, const form controls equals document.querySelector all, and we're just grabbing all of the form controls. And form controls dot for each element, arrow function element dot class list dot remove border and border danger. Let's see if that works. So let's see if it highlights it. It does. Fix it. Next error, see if it removes it. And it does. Cool. Alright, let's look at what happens when we actually fill out the form correctly. So let's make a new user. Password. We should see a success message. So let's see if that works. Okay, success. And this should have hit the route. So our user should be created. So it should have hit this route. And this should have been executed, but since it's an Ajax request, nothing's going to happen when we get to this line. Let's just see if that user went into our database. And it did. But we want to have like a flash message. So I'm going to do this instead. I'm going to get rid of this. Oops. And then I'm going to do session flash. Success message. And user successfully created. And this is essentially doing what this just did. And we can return some JSON if we want. We don't have to do this, but it looks clean if we do this. Success, true. Okay, so now let's see if it refreshes the page and we get this if we put in some details for a user. Okay, 1@1.com, password. Let me show you if the two passwords don't match. Let's make sure that case works. And it does, cool. And let's see if this refreshes. Oh, I didn't. Did I refresh? Oh, I did not. Oh, I still have to do something in my front end. So I have to refresh the page on my front end here. So window.location.href equals, and since we're still in a blade view, we can actually just do this. And hopefully that works. Let's try it again. That user went through, so I have to make a new one. Yeah, let's make another one. Let's refresh this. Oh, okay, see, now it's going through. Now you see that flash message, but let's do it one more time. 2@2.com, password, and there we go. That worked. Check the database. If 2 is in there, and he is, cool. Obviously this should be hashed, so it doesn't matter because I'm not logging in, but in here I should specify for the password to be hashed. Let me just do that quickly actually. Bcrypt. And that should be better. Let's give it another shot. 3@3.com, password. Cool, user created successfully. Let's check the database. And it's correctly hashed. Cool. We can also do the positive case in a more sort of like single page app style, where we don't do this, but in our JavaScript, right here, instead of refreshing the page, I don't need this anymore. Take this out. We can reset the form. So we'll just clear out the form fields, and I can just insert a message. So similar to what we did before, after end. Let me just do div class equals alert success, and form submitted, actually so user created successfully, and close the div. This should work as well, but this time we're doing it in a sort of single page app style where the page does not refresh. Okay, let me try this again. So 4@4.com, password, and yeah, we can scroll down, but if I scroll down, there it is here. I put it here because usually people click, but you can work on this scrolling. And let's see if that person is in the database. And they are, cool. Okay, I added the scrolling. All I did was put an ID on the success message, and I just scrolled to it like we did before. Okay, the next thing I want to show you is custom error messages. So since we're getting our error messages from Laravel, we just have to change the error message here in our user request. So I'm just going to paste in a new method called messages, and it's just going to return an array with your custom error messages. So for example, for name.required here, you can put in your custom message there, and I have one for email.email, and you can do for any validation rule you like. So let me save that, refresh this, and this should have the new custom message, and it does. There you go. Put that in, and there you go. The email field is required. I thought I customized that. Oh yeah, I have to put that first, and then now it should have it. There you go. Also, make sure for email, you want to make sure that it's unique, because if you enter an email that already exists, then there's going to be an error. So make sure you have this validation rule as well. So let's put unique on the users table, yep. And this should automatically work. Let me just refresh this. And I already have this email in the database. And this should have a proper message. There you go. So there you have it, guys. We've managed to use Ajax Validation from within Laravel to give our application a slightly better user experience. Like I said before, personally, I don't do this. I usually combine server-side validation and browser validation, but I might consider this in the future as an alternative to using a JavaScript library for validation. A part of me wants to extract this code to a Laravel package so someone can just drop it into a project and have instant Ajax validation. There's actually a few packages that I found that do something similar, but I'm going to do more research, and if it's not as simple as what I'm trying to do, then maybe I will extract to a package. If you're watching this in the future, just check the description below, and if I do make it, I will link it there. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already done so. Thanks for watching, guys. See you in the next one. Okay, thanks. Bye.